Hello again guys, welcome back to another Big Al Devlin video, and this is my quick review of the Legions of Nagash. Now I say it's going to be a quick review because I don't really want to be sitting here reading every rule to you, because a lot of the stuff that is in this book is just a copy and paste of what's in the normal rule book anyway. But does that mean that this book is not worthy of purchasing? No, it doesn't. If you are a collector of the Death faction within Age of Sigmar, or you just like reading lots about fluff and how the timelines advanced and how the different realms like the Realm of Death exist now and all the rest of it, and you want to fill out the fluff in your head and the background of Age of Sigmar, then this is a good book to add to your collection. It's only £25 in England, which is pretty cheap. I don't know how much it is in America, but it is quite a thin book, and as I say, a lot of it is copy and paste. But what you get on the side of rules is very important. I mean, at the beginning you have, descriptions of things like the Nighthaunt spirits and that. You have your usual fluff that you get in pretty much every book. You then get a load of sort of pictures of showing off the models looking fantastic, I must add. Okay? Once they've shown off, oh, look how good our models are, they actually do include some basic painting guides also, which is really nice that they do that. I think that's fantastic that they've included that. And then you get to the juicy stuff, the rules. Now the rules, on the whole, and I'll be focusing on certain rules before we leave this video. But the rules are summarised at the back. Well, not the rules, but the picture battle profiles are summarised on the very back page. So if you want the points of any miniature that is described, or you want to see, I don't know if you can zoom in there and see, that is every single death model that is covered by this book. Now, some death models are no longer covered by this book. And I can't remember which ones they are off the top of my head, but they were very minor models. But there is no inclusion of forge-rolled miniatures in here. So is it the Morghast, I believe it's called? You can't include that in the Legion. Okay, you've got to go down Death as your allegiance instead. But what this rule book does do is provide you with, first of all, a new way of playing Death in a much more unified manner. For a long time, Death seems to have been very, very hard to make an army out of, because of the new ally rules and things like that. The fact that the keywords, there's so many different keywords within Death that you would never have a coherent force, and it's very, very difficult as a result to make a legal army that isn't sort of too far from someone else's undead army. There's very little room for maneuver. But what this book does is it gives you a lot of room to maneuver, to field almost in any type of army that you want. Obviously, before this, we did have certain extreme forces that did exist that you could make armies out of because there was simply enough units to work with, and that was Nighthaunt. Arguably Soulblight, in my opinion, they don't have enough model range to work with, but arguably Soulblight, potentially Deathrattle, but Deathrattle had no wizards whatsoever, so they had to ally wizards in, and sometimes that just felt wrong, or it limited you because you weren't able to get the number of wizards that you wanted in there, because if you wanted a small game, you just didn't have enough points to do it. Or you just didn't have. Maybe you wanted to put a Mortarch in there, and you couldn't because 400 points. Well, you got to be paying 200, which is the points of Neferata, for example, is the cost of the maximum amount of points that you're allowed to spend on allies in a 2,000 point battle, and you spend all your ally points on just getting a Mortarch in. It felt weird. These were the leaders of the dead. Why are they so hard to get into your army? Felt weird. But ultimately, this fixes that to some degree. I have decided, despite collecting undead for 30 odd years, sorry, 20 odd years, I collected undead before Vampire Counts even had a rule book, when it was just undead, when the rules from Nagash, the old Nagash, the clown face Nagash existed and stuff like that, and skeleton chariots existed before Tomb Kings were brought out and all that. Despite being a hardcore Death fan, this has kind of convinced me in many ways not to really collect Death anymore. And there's a good reason for this. It's always been a massive aim for me to create an army for Neferata to represent the Lamian bloodline as best as possible, but old school Neferata, especially, and this became an ambition for me when I saw the End of Time model that they have for her. It's beautiful miniatures, absolutely gorgeous, and I want to give it justice. I want to give it an army that model would typically lead in the old world. Now I know we're not in the old world anymore, but regardless, I want to field a Lamian based army. I want to field a horde of skeletons. I'd like skeleton archers, but I'm not bothered about not having them. I want Neferata, and and I want a few Morghasts and things like this, and it just becomes harder to do because Morghasts now are no longer battle line for Deathlords. They're battle line for legions of Nagash when Nagash is the general. So they've changed their ability to act as battle line units, and that affects all of my army lists that I had for Neferata. I have no way of fielding essentially legal force without putting a load more skeletons on the battlefield that I have anyway, and taking away miniatures that I want to field. Morghasts look cool. I want them on the battlefield, but I can't field them. So I'm going to stick with my Flesh Eater Courts. They're going to be my Death army, and I'm going to work out a good one for them. I've been collecting them since like 100 videos down. I want, long before Flesh Eater Battle Tome even existed, I took the risk and decided to do a Ghoul-only army, and paid off because obviously they gave me a Battle Tome quite soon after doing that video. But for me, they've got some of the rules, in my opinion, the fluff, the background, or the rules don't fully represent the background of some of the vampires perfectly. It's a shame that Neferata's become the head of vampires. I know she's the first of all the vampires, but she was more than that also. Why couldn't they keep Vlad von Carstein for that job, or give it to Manfred? Why does Manfred have to be sneaky? Because he's got quite a sneaky army list. Give Neferata just a massive legion of skeletons and constructs, and like you used to have in Tomb Kings and that. But anyway, I digress. Forces of Death. Some of you will love it. Okay, so it describes here, and this is the only part of the book where there is a little bit of room for manoeuvre in regards to rule lawyers. And that is, it's uncertain, 100% certain, that by taking a Grand Host or a Legion, whether that would count as your faction. Now, obviously, when you pick a faction, you get access to artifacts, command traits, special rules, so on and so forth. So you can go Soulblight, for example, or you can go Nighthaunt currently. And it doesn't really, it's because it comes right after allegiances, it comes after alliances, and then it comes into it comes Legions of Nagash, and the different legions that you can have are the Grand Host of Nagash, the Legions of Sacrament, the Legion of Blood, and the Legion of Night. So they're the legions that you can pick to base your armies around. That's fine, and it's within the faction section. So there, it's not really open to interpretation, but as soon as you turn it over, it says here allegiance abilities, and that's where you're going to get your rule lawyers coming in going, well, I can have a Soulblight army that is part of the Legion of Blood and benefit from both slots of special rules. Personally, I think that would be wrong, even though it would benefit me, because that's the army that I would pick. I personally believe that's wrong. But the first Legion or Grand Host of Nagash to talk about, isn't it? The Grand Host of Nagash. Okay, you get your set of unique command traits and artifacts. Okay, I've not really read through them, so it's a little. I don't want to read through every single one because I did a take of this video just previously, and it took half an hour just to get through the Grand Host of Nagash by reading you all the artifacts, all the command traits. It took ages, so I'm going to try and skip that, but just say that one of my most favourite artifacts is the Balefire Lantern. I think the Terrorgeist Mantle is useless, but the Balefire Lantern allows you to subtract one from Rune Rolls for enemy units within 6 inches of the bearer. And in addition to this, you force enemy wizards within 6 inches of the bearer to also re-roll successful casting rolls. That is particularly useful because even though the wizard part, that doesn't matter. It can be useful, but you're not typically going to get wizards coming up close and personal because they typically are fragile in combat. Not all the time, but they can be. But the ability to decrease wound rolls of your enemy by 1 is a big thumbs up, because of course certain enemies have, on a roll of a 6 or more, you do, instead of 1 wound, you do D3 wounds, or you inflict mortal wounds, or you do this. They get additional abilities, so that -1 to their wound roll is a massive benefit to anyone. And having that not just on that miniature, but on a radius, a 6-inch radius, which is not massive, but it's still a radius, is particularly good. The command traits, Ancient Strategist, that's one of my favourite ones because that allows you to re-roll failed charge rolls for all friendly Death Rattle and Morghast units within 9 inches as a general. So if you're keeping your general fairly centralised, that's a very good command trait in my opinion. Or the one that follows it, Lord of Nagash, add 1 to the attack characteristics of melee weapons used by friendly Death Rattle units that are within 6 inches of the general. That makes skeletons quite dangerous. That makes skeletons very dangerous indeed. Or should I say Graveguard? Okay, because one of the things about the Grand Host of Nagash is the Grand Host of Nagash makes, and it doesn't say it in this bit here, but if you go to the back where it summarises it all, the Grand Host of Nagash does make Graveguard. And it's only the Grand Host of Nagash. That's the only legion that does it. Makes Graveguard battle line. Okay, so interesting. Right. So overall, the Grand Host of Nagash is the legion that you'd pick if you wanted a very predominantly Death Rattle force. If you're a Death Rattle lover, you're going to love the Grand Host of Nagash. It's going to favour you so much because it's going to give you boosts to the magic users that you manage to get into your force, and as I say, it gives you now command abilities, artifacts, command traits. It's fantastic. Okay. Every single wizard within the Grand Host of Nagash, and it's the same within every legion, automatically knows 1 extra spell from the Lord of the Dead on top of any other spell that they might already have on their war scroll. So that's quite useful. Adds a little bit of variety and a little bit of choice to you regarding magic. So instead of just having Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, 1 other random spell, you've got another bit of extra casting there, abilities there. So your necromancers, if you ally them in, you don't have to ally them in, or if you use them, are going to be quite meaty. They're going to be okay, you know. The unit requirement for this army is nothing. You can use any death unit. And that's why I'm saying it's great for Death Rattle, because you can form the base of your army as Death Rattle, but then support it with characters like vampires who are all wizards, or necromancers who are wizards, or even Nagash himself, who obviously is a wizard, a very good wizard at that. And he has to be general, by the way. That's just one quick note. He has to be general if he's used. But other than that, it is going to be a great legion for Death Rattle, and I give you the reasons why now. First of all, every single legion or whole host within here has a certain number of rules that are repeated, and I'm going to go over the repeated rules first. So every legion gives you these extra abilities, and they're very nice abilities indeed. The first ability is called the Unquiet Dead. The Unquiet Dead allows you to place 4 grave sites on the battlefield at the beginning of the game. 2 of those grave sites have to be in your part of the battlefield, your half of the battlefield, your deployment zone. But 2 of them can be anywhere on the battlefield, and that's fantastic. Okay, because these grave sites, one, they can't be attacked or destroyed; they're permanently there, and they allow any death hero within 9 inches to sort of activate their powers, so we say. To activate their powers, and basically their first power that they have allows you to keep back units in reserve, essentially. So as long there is a new keyword within here, within the War Scrolls, that you need to be aware of, and that's why this book is an essential for any death player, and that is, if your unit counts as summonable, which is all the skeletons, all the zombies, all the dire wolves, you know, I think it's spirit hosts, things like this, basically anything that's not a hero, pretty much, then a summonable unit can be held back in reserve, and it can be brought on from reserve within 9 inches of that grave site, providing there is a death hero within 9 inches of that grave site at the beginning of your movement phase. The only other thing is, I think they have to be within, you know, further than 9 inches of the enemy, or so. Yeah, they have to be more than 9 inches from the enemy. So it's a little bit of negotiation where to put them. But if they're in your deployment zone, I mean, certainly turn 1, it's an easy way of getting models onto the battlefield. And keeping your numbers of models that you deploy down to a minimum to try and get first turn. So it's a nice ability to have that just to start off with. It's also nice at the end of the game when it comes to objective taking or anything along those lines. If the grave site's nearby, pop them on, especially towards the end of the game when a lot of miniatures have been killed, so there's a bit more space to maneuver around and fit models on. It's another good way to get summonable units onto the battlefield reliably. That's the whole point, because what this has done, the Unquiet Dead, has replaced completely the summoning mechanic that used to exist before, where you used to use magic of 2 dice. For example, on a 4+, you can summon a unit of 10 skeletons. Those 10 skeletons come out of your summoning points that you leave behind, basically your army points. If you're playing a 2,000 point army, you have to fill 1,900 points worth of, well, 1,920 points worth of miniatures if you want to be able to summon a unit of 10 skeletons. So to be able to do that, you've got to decrease your army to start with. It's annoying. Obviously, you still kind of have to do this with this in theory, but it's a more definite way of getting them on there. There's no roll, it's just done. And providing you fulfill the requirements, it's done, you bring them on. But the only difference is you can only bring them on here, okay, within this particular area. The other advantage is that the grave sites also act in a manner which the new heroes of death act. Pretty much all the heroes in death now have, I forget what it's called, but let's go get the ability, Deathly Invocation. They have the ability called Deathly Invocation. Not all heroes, but a lot of them, certainly the vampires and the wizards, okay? And basically what that allows them to do is to essentially act like flesh eater courts. They allow themselves to replace miniatures that have died during the game, or restore wounds to models that have been wounded during the game. That is because you cannot summon new units apart from through these grave sites, and these grave sites can only summon units that you've included in the army list. There's no no way you can change your army as you go along now, like you used to be able to do. Just bring Nagash and then just summon whatever army you needed to defeat your opponent. You can't do that now. Completely impossible. Instead, you are restoring your miniatures as they die. And this is a bit of a shame in some ways because it feels a bit more like they're turning us into the old Tomb Kings. One of the things about Vampires is it was always nice to finish a game if you did particularly well with more miniatures on the battlefield than you started off with. But I think it's a clean way of doing it, and it is nice to know that you only need to buy 80 skeletons. You don't have to buy 100 just so you got 20 just in case you need to summon something. It's always annoying having to buy more models than you're actually probably going to use. The other thing is, as I say, is that they have this ability called Invigorating Aura in their case, but as I say, within the heroes' cases, it's called Deathly Invocation, and that allows the grave sites themselves to restore wounds to models within range. Okay, and it's only D3 wounds, but it all adds up. Particularly powerful heroes have a very strong Deathly Invocation. And I'm going to go over the rule now, even though it's not part of this Grand Host. All your strong heroes will have this new ability, Deathly Invocation. Nagash is probably, I think, can restore 5 units. You can pick 5 units and add D3 wounds to each one of those units, and I think with him actually it's just an automatic 3, so he can add 15 miniatures onto the battlefield automatically, or 15 wounds back onto the battlefield automatically, providing they're within range. Okay, which is 9 inches. Neferata, for example, who's a Mortarch, very powerful vampire, I think it's 4 for her. She can only do it with 4 units. A Vampire Lord, I haven't checked, but they can do 3 different units. Okay, but here's the point: each character can only restore 1 unit once per turn. Okay, so if you have a character attached to a unit or behind a unit and no other units nearby, and they can restore 3 units, they're wasting part of their Deathly Invocation. They can only restore this unit once, and that's it. If there's nothing within 9 inches this way, or nothing within 9 inches this way, they can only use their Deathly Invocation once. So it forces the undead army now to kind of like really group together, which is nice because that's how it used to be, just one big horde, and it used to just march towards you relentlessly. And that's the kind of forcing that mechanic on you now, but if you want to get the most out of your heroes. But it's regardless, it's a tidy way of doing it, and I prefer it. I think it's the best way of doing it. It's just I don't like it personally because I'm an old-fashioned vampire camp player. I like to summon new units onto the battlefield. The other abilities that are, so basically what we were discussing before I got on to Deathly Invocation was the shared abilities between all the different legions. The first one was the Unquiet Dead. That is the ability to place 4 grave sites that can do a variety of different things. The other one is every hero, every general gets access, if they want to use it, to a new command ability called Endless Legions. And this basically, again, if they're within 9 inches of a grave site, allows them to pick a friendly summonable unit that has been previously and completely destroyed during the game, and just bring it back for free. Okay, that is really good. And there are ways I've seen, I can't remember them now, but there's certain artifacts and certain powers and certain characters that can do that naturally anyway. So there's a possibility you might be able to do that twice. And that is in a single turn. Because of course being a command ability, you can do that every turn. So the enemy's going to really struggle to get rid of you. Not just because of the grave sites, not just because of Deathly Invocation, not just because of your new command ability, Endless Legions, but also because if you are part of the Grand Host of Nagash. Sorry, no, you also get deathless minions on everyone also, and so you basically get to negate a wound on a 6-up, just like the Freshwater Corpse, and just like the death abilities are standard. So you still got that 6-up invulnerable essentially. So it's not much, or feel no pain. It's not much, but it's something. Here's one quick combination that I'm just going to discuss now before I start moving on a little bit. The Ossific Diadem is an artifact of Nagash that can be given to a hero. And it basically, every Death Rattle model within 12 inches of the bearer, every time they take a wound, roll a d6. If it's a 6, the wound's negated. So they get that combined with the Deathless Minions ability, means they get it twice on top of their armor save. And that's why I'm saying the Grand Host Nagash is going to be very, very good for Death Rattle. The other reasons are its rules that aren't shared with the other legions. So the shared rules were the Unquiet Dead, Deathless Minions, Endless Legions, and the fact that every wizard gets an extra spell, okay, from the Lord of Death. Okay. However, the Grand Host of Nagash gives Chosen Guardians. Add 1 to the attack characteristic of any Morghast unit. Very nice. Legions are numerable in your hero phase. You may roll a dice for every summonable unit on the battlefield that is part of your Grand Host. On a 5-up, he'll do 3 wounds. Simple. So you get that for free, just as an extra. So you're going to be summoning a lot of your troops back. Now, my dogs come say hello. One thing that I will note is there is obviously a major change now to the War Scrolls of certainly skeletons at least, and that is banners. Banners no longer restore wounds to your units. Instead, the skeleton one, at least, because that's the only one I looked at, because I don't have any zombies, gives a -1 modifier to your enemy's leadership instead. So long gone are using banners to restore wounds. The other legions that you can use instead of the Grand Host Nagash, now the Grand Host Nagash can be led by anyone, including any Morghast, any Vampire Lord, any hero essentially. But the Legion of Sacrament, again, can be led by anyone, but if it's led by Archon the Black, then he is the general. Okay, and it can't be led by Nagash. Okay, it's got artifacts of power, and it has command traits. And out of these, the artifacts that really none of them really catch my eye again, but the wristbands of black gold, it's nice to see that in there actually. That's an old artifact from the old Vampire Codex or Army book, and that is on a 4+, a wound is negated, but be it a normal wound or mortal wound, every time it's the bearer on the bearer. So the bearer essentially gets a 4+ invulnerable against any damage. That's always nice. And the Azure Bane standard, okay, allows you to subtract 1 from wound rolls from enemy units within 6 inches of the bearer. In addition, loud, didn't they? In addition, re-roll successful casting rolls for order wizards within 6 inches of the bearer. So it's similar to that one that I mentioned before. Could be useful, could be not. The black gem is on here, and that is potentially powerful, but it's just so unlikely to do anything. Basically, pick a point on a battlefield within 8 inches of the bearer. Roll a dice for each unit within 3 inches of this point. On a 6-up, 1 model from that unit is slain. Yeah, that's it. So you can use it against hordes, obviously, but Black Gem typically is in old laws and old fluff and stuff used as a hero killer. You just throw it at RK on and hope for the best. On a 6-up, he dies. That's it. No save, nothing. There's no mortal wound. There's no way around it. You die. So it gives you a 1 in 6 chance to just remove something super powerful. It's cool. if that's your thing, take it. But it's not. I like something a little bit more dependable because it's only 1 in 6 times. Regards command traits. The Legion of Sacrament is going to be much more of a defensive force. It relies much more on its grave sites than the other legions, and so Peerless Commander, that allows you to use or summon a unit from a grave site when you're 12 inches away rather than 9 inches away from the grave site with your hero, with your general. That's nice. It gives you that extra 3-inch mobility either way. And Bound to Mastery of Death. All friendly death units within 6 inches of this general may make a 3-inch move as if it was the movement phase. That's quite a nice way to speed up your skeletons. Skeletons are slow. With that, essentially, they have a movement of 7 when they are within range of your general, which is quick. They're like witch elves then, very, very quick. And that can be very useful, especially if you hold back in the early stages, use your grave sites, as I'll describe in a minute, defensively, and then all of a sudden just make that massive surge forwards, at least in the centre where your general might be. And it can be quite a nice way of filling in your gaps. Like before, you get an extra spell per wizard. Just for having it, you have the Unquiet Dead, Endless Legions, Deathless Minions ability, but you also get what's called two extra abilities called the Master's Teachings. Whenever an enemy unit is destroyed, before removing the last model, you may pick one of the grave sites within 6 inches of that model. On a 4-up, you may pick a friendly summonable unit that has been destroyed and set it up again wholly within 9 inches of that grave site and more than 9 inches from any enemy models. So it's a bit dependent on certain conditions, but that gives you free, Endless Legions ability, that command trait that I described before in the Grand Host Nagash, where you can bring back a unit, gives you the ability to do it for free, providing you just completely destroy an enemy unit within range of your grave site. So placement of your grave site is going to be very important. Keep very defensive, draw the enemy in towards your grave site, so every time you kill them, you've got at least create some space behind, hopefully, to bring in just another destroyed unit of your own. So your ability to resist attrition with the Legion of Sacrament is going to be very, very high if you use these abilities correctly. And the other one is Black Disciples, friendly Legion of Sacrament wizards, add 1 to their casting rolls. That's nice. That's a nice overall extra ability. It's nothing it's not gonna break the game or anything, but it makes casting spells easier. Now this is the one that I was trying to do, Legion of Blood. A part of me now wants to really do the Legion of Sacrament. I could do that with Archon the Black. He's a bit cheaper than Neferata for starters, and he does supplement skeletons very well. And I could just get a bunch of right kings in my army to further support it melee wise, and or maybe get some necromancers and just go all out on magic, I don't know, or do something with get some vampires in there that look more like Tomb Kings than anything else. Could be interesting. But this I do like that Legion of Sacrament. I do like it. I can see so much you could do with that. So maybe I might just keep my undead army after all. I'm not sure. I'll have to have a look. But the Legion of Blood is what disappointed me. Now, for a lot of you, it will actually be really, 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 really cool. Okay, Legion of Blood. Is there. Okay, so I don't know how much of the camera's picking up. It's really hard to see from here, guys. But that was a Legion of Sacrament. Okay, so the Legion of Blood. Again, has all the same abilities we've described before. Looking at the artifacts, the artifacts, there's a couple of ones at the end that just make it really hard for the enemy to cast spells. So you've got an Amulet of Screams that allows you to negate a spell on a 2+. It's once per use only, no range, and you've got another one that has a 30-inch range, and on a 6-up. you negate the spell automatically, and that wizard can no longer use that spell ever again in that game. So that's okay. It's a 6-up. I don't like it really, but you know, there's some magical defense in here. Reroll saves of 1 for the bearer. It's not that good really. I don't know. However, Aristocracy of Blood. If we look at the command traits, so the artifacts, they could be okay. It's just I don't really see anything really popping out. I see some ways of inflicting mortal wounds on the enemy that could be useful. The Orb of Enchantments, basically once per turn. Sorry, oh that's quite good. Once per battle, pick an enemy hero within 3 inches. They can't do anything. That's nice. I like that. That's nice, especially when there's not that many turns in a game. You just literally just stop them for an entire turn doing anything. That Orb of Enchantment. There we go. That's the one I'd pick. But just having a quick look at the command traits, I see Aristocracy of Blood. You can re-roll all failed charge rolls for friendly Soulblight units within 9 inches of the general at the start of the charge phase. That's very nice, especially as this will be typically using Soulblight units, and it'll be using, if you use this Legion correctly, Blood Knights. So you want to get them in combat. The Blood Knights are dangerous as hell with this Legion of Blood, and that's why a lot of you will like this. If you've got a lot of Blood Knights, you want to field your Mausolean Death Bretonnian army, this is the Legion for you. It's fantastic for that kind of stuff. And Aura of Dark Majesty, which is an old Von Carstein ability actually. Subtract 1 from the hit rolls of attacks that target a general in combat phase. Again, I like those abilities because it, you know, when it stops the enemy hitting you with those 6 or more abilities. Again, you have the Unquiet Dead, Deathless Minions, Endless Legions, so on and so forth, and the extra spell per wizard. But you also have Immortal Majesty. Subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of every enemy unit within 6 inches of any friendly Legion of Blood unit. So basically your entire army, enemy within 6 inches of them, subtract 1 from the leadership. Sorry, from their bravery. It's not bad. It's okay. And favoured retainers. Add 1 to the attack characteristics of all melee weapons for all friendly Legion of Blood Vampire Lords, and that's the important bit, Vampire Lords. It doesn't apply to the vampires on Coven of Thrones, like Handmaidens and that. It's a mighty old shame, because if it did that, then I would actually probably do a Legion of Blood Force, because I love Coven of Thrones, and it would be nice for that to also benefit Neferata, who has several different types of attacks. But it only affects basic Vampire Lords on foot. Okay, and also Legion of Blood Knights. So Blood Knights get +1 attack in this Legion. That makes them deadly. Oh yeah, Blood Knights. There's going to be a lot. They just need to do a new model for them. If they did a new model, they'd sell a lot, because they are really, really dangerous in Legion of Blood. Really dangerous. Okay. And now we get to the Legion of Night, which is the one that's led by Manfred von Carstein. Okay, again, we've got the same things. I'm just going to pause the video quickly just to look at the artifact. Okay, guys, so I haven't had a massive look, but there's a couple of really nice ones actually. Once per battle, you can add 1 to hit and wound rolls for the bearer. That's quite useful if you've got someone on a dragon, a zombie dragon, because it would affect the zombie dragon attack. So that could really help, and that's called the Vial of Pure Blood. Shard of Night, very nice. Subtract 1 from the hit rolls of attacks that target the bearer in the shoot. Oh, it's only the shooting phase. Not so good, but it's still okay. Protects you against a very shooty force, but I wouldn't take that then, because it's too. Unless you know you're going up against a lot of arrows, you know, or cannons and stuff like that. Curse Blade, I love it. I love it. And Gem of Exsanguination. The artifacts for the Legion of the Night are really good at inflicting mortal wounds. Not a huge amount, but enough to be annoying. The Gem of Exsanguination, once per battle at the start of the combat phase, pick an enemy unit within 6 inches. Now bear in mind that can be a hero. So if an enemy hero is within 6 inches, on a roll of dice, on 1 nothing happens, 2 to 5 they suffer d3 mortal wounds, on a 6 they suffer d6 mortal wounds. So it's not a huge amount, it could just be 1 regardless, because if you roll bad, you know, it could be nothing. But that's quite nice. And then you got the Curse Blade, which is, this just makes me laugh. I love this. I'd have it just because it's an idiot thing to have. After armies have been set up, before the first battle round begins, pick an enemy hero. If your hero, in your hero phase, as long as the enemy hero is on the battlefield, roll a dice. On a 4-up, the enemy hero suffers a mortal wound, and you may heal a wound that has been allocated to the bearer of this weapon. So, every hero phase, you could be inflicting a mortal wound on whatever hero that you've picked. The enemy general, why not? Although if they've got protection against mortal wounds, just go for an easy target like a wizard that doesn't have any, you know, like Archaon's going to protect himself against it. You can probably ignore it on a 4-up or whatever it is. But on someone who can't protect themselves, you can just keep inflicting mortal wounds randomly, just literally from the length of the battlefield, and heal yourself at the same time, which can get you out of sticky situations or put them into it. I love it. I love it. I do like the Legion of Night. It looks really, really fun, to be honest. The only thing is, I hate Manfred von Carstein. I hate him. Hate him with a vengeance, because I'm a Vlad fan. Back when I started, Manfred did exist. They didn't have a model for him, but he was the pussy boy for Vlad. Vlad was the guy. Where's Vlad, guys? Come on. Legion of Night. He should have been the Mortarch, not Manfred. Within the command traits, typical von Carstein shit, basically. Yeah, nothing really worth talking about. But their abilities, same as before, Endless Legions and Quiet Dead, so on and so forth. They've got the bait. Add 1 to save rolls for friendly Legion of the Night Death Rattle units that are wholly within your territory. Nice. Very nice. So all of a sudden, I mean, they have a 6-up armor save as standard, then they have a 5+ armor save with their shields, if they have shields, against any attack that doesn't have a rend. And you can just add 1 to their save automatically to make it a 4-up. So against basic stuff, they've got a 4-up armor save, put them in cover. They've got 3-up armor save. If it's really important to keep them alive, Mystic Shield them. Okay, so that's nice. So you can have somewhere in the sense, somewhere annoying on an objective, a big unit of skeletons or Graveguard, and yeah, Graveguard are affected, of course. You know what? That also applies to Black Knights. That's actually a really useful ability, but it only applies to your half. So again, it might force you to be defensive and then have a strong counter at the end. Ageless Cunning. So I've not read this, I don't know what this ability is, so let's see what it is. Instead of setting up a Legion of the Night unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it is in an ambush. You can do this with up to 3 units. At the end of any of your movement phases, you can simply set up any of these units in ambush wholly within 6 inches of the battlefield edge, more than 9 inches away from the enemy. That is amazing. So you can take 3 units and just take them off the battlefield and summon them. Bear in mind, you've also got grave sites. Okay, so you've got several chances. Say your enemy, your heroes get killed. You've got no way of getting your guys back. As long as they're part of those 3 units, at least 3 units are coming back. You could have a really strong reserve with the Legion of Night. Really, really strong reserve. And that makes them, to me, particularly good. Particularly good. Then we've got an interlude there. We've got the magic, which I'll go over in a minute, but then you've got the Soul Blight abilities, which would be identical. I have read it. I can't see any differences. And the Allegiance abilities, Death in here as well. So you've got Death and Soul Blight in here as well. but they are found elsewhere for free anyway if you have the General's Handbook. But then we've got Laws of the Dead, which is magic, and one of the things that I really like about magic within the new Undead Army is that it represents magic within the old Undead Army. Necromancy was one of those magics that was one of the few magics that you could do the same spell again and again and again and just keep casting it. In the old magic, it was a bit like how it is now, the rule of one. That's it. You can cast it once a turn, and that's it. They've kind of shown this by using something called the Locus of Shyish, and that is basically if you roll a 9 or more when casting a spell, you get to cast it again for free. That's it. And it can target the same unit twice, or it can you can choose a different target. Doesn't matter. You can do same target, different target, whatever. There's no restrictions. You just cast it again, as if it's been cast for the very first time. And so, if you were, for example, casting a spell called Overwhelming Dread, which normally gives a -1 modifier to the bravery characteristic, and you get a 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 on your casting roll, then you decide to cast it again, and you just decide to put it on the same target unit, then all of a sudden they've got -2 to the bravery. That's quite good, especially in combination with some of the other things, like the fact that skeletons give you a -1 modifier to your bravery when they're standards in base contact with you. If you're a member of the Legion of Blood, you just simply -1 leadership. You could be giving -4 bravery. Sorry guys, I keep saying leadership. It's 40k coming at me. You give -4 to bravery automatically. That is an amazing potential ability there, just to reduce bravery. But I can't really see the use of it. It'd be very useful in an aberrant. Sorry, I keep calling it aberrant Ghoul Kings. Flesh Eater Court army, because if you've got Terrorgeists all over the place, that would be very, 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 very nice indeed. I'd love to have access to these spells, but unfortunately, that's one point to make. Flesh Eater Courts aren't included in here. They are, I believe, counted as allies, and they can be taken as allies to everyone bar the Soul Blight. Soul Blight cannot be allied with Flesh Eater Courts, but everyone else can. Okay, so they don't have any additional magic. So basically, the point remains that if you are a collector of Flesh Eater Courts, you do need a new book. You need a new book with magic, artifacts, all this lovely jubbly stuff here. You're not desperate for it, so I say I'm not desperate for it as well, because I am a collector. So I'm not going to complain that I haven't got it, but we need it soon, because otherwise they're going to just be on the sideline now compared to everyone else. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read out, because we're coming to the end of our video. I've got nothing really else to say, because the War Scrolls, guys, you're going to have already access to anyway, probably on the app on your phone or anything along those lines. So the last thing I'm going to cover in here is the Laws of the Dead. I'm not going to cover the War Scrolls, as I say. The only War Scroll I will cover will be the Bloodseeker Palanquin, because it's a new model, but everything else is basically the same, just minus a couple of differences, like the skeletons, the banners and stuff. Okay, but overwhelming. So there are two laws: the law of death mages and the law of vampires. So basically, if you're a death mage, it'd be your keywords. If you've got death mage in your keyword, you pick law of the death mages. If you're a vampire, you have to use the law of vampires. Okay, so there's no choice which one you use. You have to use one or the other. However, there is choice for Deathlord wizards. Deathlords can use either or. Okay, and they can mix and match their spells in and amongst both these tables, which is really nice. And the Gash can use any of these spells. Neferata, Mumford, and Arkan the Black can all use any of these spells. have access to any of these spells, which is really nice, really nice. Okay, so Overwhelming Dread we've been over. That gives a -1 to the bravery characteristic, and it has a casting value of 5 and a range of 18 inches. The second spell of the Law of Death Mages, so this is like the Necromancers, human mages essentially, the weaker mages of the army. And unless you're Heinrich Himmler, in which case you're going to be a very good caster. Fading Vigor has a casting value of 6, range of 18. Subtract -1 from all enemy subtract 1 from the attack characteristics of that unit's melee weapons for a single turn. And only roll a single dice when making charge rolls with it. So, and it's down to a minimum of 1 regards to attack characteristics. So if you're going up against a big unit of core, it can help soften the blow. It's not fantastic. It's a shame it can't reduce the attacks down to 0, because then it'd be very nice indeed against big blocks of crappy infantry. Spectral Grasp has a casting value of 6, range of 18 inches. Although bear in mind that can stack. Bear in mind if you roll a 9 or more, 2 Fading Vigors could be quite nice against very elite units. Okay, Spectral Grasp, 18 inches, casting value of 6. Until your next hero phase, half the movement characteristic of enemy units within 3 inches of any terrain features affected by the Spectral Grasp spells at the start of that phase. So basically, you have to pick a terrain feature. Okay, within 18 inches, and also actually within line of sight of the caster, and everyone within 3 inches of all enemy units within 3 inches of the terrain that has been affected. Half of them, it's not that great. It's okay. It can slow down one flank of the army, or if there's a big terrain feature, why not? Prison of Grief, casting value of 7. It's a shame it's not permanent. If Spectral Grasp, if that permanently affected the terrain, that would be useful, because it would gradually mount up. Although obviously, again, if you roll a 9, there you go. Or you have several wizard cast. Oh no, rule of 1. Prison of Grief, casting value 7. Pick an enemy unit within 12 inches until the next hero phase. Roll a dice. 5 up. That unit may not move in that phase. That's not that great. That's not that great. So it gives you a 5 up chance of stopping a unit moving in any phase up to your next hero phase. I mean, that includes movement, charge, run, anything like that. But it's not that great. I mean, it affects. I suppose if you cast it in your turn, they have a turn, and then they have another turn. They get like one of those double turns. It could be useful. But no, it's not as good as, in my opinion, as some of the other spells. Okay, Decrepify. Casting value of 6. Pick an enemy hero within 18 inches. Until the next hero phase, subtract 1 from the rune rolls made for that model, and subtract 1 from the damage characteristics of that model's melee weapons down to a minimum of 1. That's very useful. That's very good. That's a major nerf. Especially if you can cast that multiple times. That's very, very nice. Bringing, it might do nothing. I mean, if you're gonna go and cast it on a powerhouse like Archaon, it's still going to do a lot of damage, but it's still, you're going to help decrease the amount of damage that you're going to get in return. And if your Mortarch, for example, say you have a Mortarch as your general is in combat, then it could make a difference between life and death, literally, for her or him involved. Soul Harvest, value of 7, casting value of 7. If successfully cast, each enemy unit within 3 inches of the caster suffers D3 mortal wounds. Then roll a dice for each mortal wound that was allocated to an enemy unit and not negated. For each 5 up heal 1 wound that has been allocated to the caster. Okay, so basically, say there's 2 enemy units within range, and you do D3 mortal wounds to each. Let's say they have no way of protecting themselves against mortal wounds, and you can fit 3 mortal wounds against one against the other. You've caused 4 mortal wounds. Roll 4 dice in that case. On any of those 4 dice, so it shows a 5 up. You heal 1 wound on the caster. It's okay, and it's actually going to be quite a useful spell, Soul Harvest, on models that on a big base. So the Mortarks and the Vampires and Zombie Dragons, that could be quite useful because you can get a lot around them. If they get surrounded, that can make a massive difference and help heal them up. But it's not majorly damaging. Okay. Okay, so Blades of Shyish, but onto Law of the Vampires now. So that was the Law of the Death Mage. So the first spell within the Law of the Vampires, casting value of 5. Roll a dice for each enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster, and a 5 up, the unit suffers a mortal wound. Like that. Spirit Gale. I have a feeling vampires are going to be more aggressive. So basically, Death Mage is all going to be about, nerfing your enemy, basically. And then vampires just go in and go zap. Okay. Number 2, Spirit Gale. Casting value of 6. Pick an enemy unit within 12 inches, and roll 3 dice. For every 5 up on those 3 dice that you roll, that unit suffers a mortal wound. In addition, if 2 dice show the same number, subtract 1 from its hit rolls for the unit until the next hero phase. If all 3 dice show the same number, so that's imagine if you've rolled 3 5s, that'd be amazing. You can inflict 3 mortal wounds. You subtract 1 from the hit rolls of the unit until the next hero phase, and then you do this additional thing. You subtract 1 from both hit and wound rolls for the rest of the unit. Now, that's not that likely to happen, but it's nice. It's okay. It's all right. So the potential debuff there. You're just going to try and inflict basically a mortal wound, and if for some reason you roll a 5 and 2 2s, it's nice to know that, okay, you've only inflicted 1 mortal wound, but then you also gone and subtracted 1 to the hit rolls, and that is good. So actually that spell is actually very, very good, because you've got some quite high chance of at least getting 2 dice the same. Getting all 3 the same hard. It's almost impossible, but getting 2 is very easy. Casting value of 7 for the next one, Vile Transference. Pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster, and a friendly death unit within 6 inches of that enemy unit. The enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Then, for each of these wounds that was allocated and not negated, you can heal 1 wound allocated to the friendly unit. That's fantastic. So Vile Transference allows you to basically inflict D3 mortal wounds and send them over to a friendly unit to heal them. That's fantastic. Number 4, Amathysine Pinions, I think it's pronounced. Anyway, that has a casting value of 5. Until your next hero phase, add 5 inches to the caster's move characteristic, and also on top of that, the caster can fly. Okay. Useful at endgame, taking objectives, things like that. Or whatever, just making sure you get charges, things like this. Soul Pike, value of 6. Pick an enemy within 18 inches of the caster, that is also visible. Until the next hero phase, after the unit affected by Soul Pike makes a charge move, roll a number of dice equal to the result of the charge roll. For each 5 up, you inflict a mortal That's awesome. I love it. There's a lot of mortal wounds in this magic here. I like mortal wounds, as you can tell. And then finally, the last spell. I'm getting tired now, guys, so we're going to wrap it up soon. Amaranthine Orb. Value of 7. Pick a point on the battlefield within 12 inches of the caster. Draw an imaginary straight line, 1 mil wide, from the closest part of the caster to the point that you picked, within 12 inches. Roll a dice for each unit, friend or foe, that has a model, or any models beneath this line. On a 4, that unit suffers d6 mortal wounds, so you could hurt yourself, but who cares? If it's the skeletons, they're going to heal anyway. If they're summonable, who cares about hurting yourself? Okay, so one last thing, guys, is I promised you the Bloodseeker Palanquin. Okay, the Bloodseeker Palanquin move goes from 14 inches down to 4 inches, depending on how many wounds it takes. It starts with 12 wounds. If it goes down to 2 wounds, then its move goes down to 4 inches. So it starts off at 14 inches, 12 wounds, bravery 10, and a 4-up save. It has Wail of the Damned attack, which is a ranged attack. Roll 2 dice for each enemy unit within range, which is 9 inches, and that range does go down, but not a lot as the thing takes damage. If the total is higher than the bravery of the enemy, then they take d3 mortal wounds. So it's a banshee attack, essentially similar to a banshee attack. Okay. On top of that, the Sanguinarch's Bloodletting Blade. These are melee weapons. She can make 4 attacks, 3 up to hit, 3 up to wound, -1 rend, damage d3, and then of course there are all the ethereal, spectral hosts weapons. They have 12 attacks, 3 up to hit. Oh, sorry, well, that'd be great if they were 3 up to hit, 5 up to hit, 4 up to wound, but they have Frightful Touch, so for any hit roll of a 6, they just basically inflict 1 mortal wound and don't roll for instead of normal damage. So you don't roll to damage. So 12 attacks, you're going to inflict an average of 2 mortal wounds in amongst them, and 2 wounds. Well, 2 rolls will then go through, and so on average you'll inflict 2 mortal wounds and 1 savable wound. Just going through it, okay, just math hammering it as I go along, okay. So basically this is basically a Coven Throne just with a single vampire on it, okay. It can fly, and this, you know, in addition to its melee profile that we've just been over, it has certain special rules called it's got Frightful Touch I've been over. That's the mortal wounds on a roll of 6 to hit for the spectral host ethereal weapons. Fine Vintage. If a enemy hero is slain within 9 inches of this model, add 1 to the attacks characteristics of any melee weapons used by friendly Soulblight units within 12 inches of this model until your next hero phase. That's pretty damn good. Okay, if you are a Soulblight army, imagine Blood Knights. They get +1 to attacks if they're part of the Legion of Blood anyway. If this then kills a hero, which is not likely to do, it's not very good at killing, but if it did do it, kill a low down hero, then all of a sudden they get +2 attacks. It can make your Blood Knights very dangerous indeed. The Wail of the Damned, we've just been over already, that's the Banshee attack. And then Deathly Invocation. Oh, that's interesting. This actually has Deathly Invocation, so it can heal up to 2 summonable units within 6 inches of itself and heals d3 wounds per unit. The Sanguinarch upon the Palanquin is in fact a wizard. She knows Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Blood Siphon spells. And of course, if she's part of a legion, as previously described, because she's a wizard, she will know 1 additional spell. And she is a vampire, so she'll know a spell from the Lord of Vampires, which we've just discussed, available spells to her. However, her unique spell, Blood Siphon, has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick an enemy hero within 12 inches of that caster and roll a dice. On a 1 to 3, hero suffers a mortal wound. 4 to 5, d3 mortal wounds, and a 6, d6 mortal wounds. Now that's quite interesting because find vintage. If an enemy hero is slain within 9 inches of this model. So I got it in my head that she had to kill him in combat, but she could just blood siphon you off and then use the Banshee also to do some wounds, and then some skeletons nearby could kill off the hero, whatever. And then your Blood Knights are, yeah, scary. And also remember, Soulblight models also include every single vampire out there. So yeah, it's a great way of boosting your vampires up and giving them as many attacks as possible. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, guys. I know you didn't really see much of the book itself, but I have tried to discuss it in detail as best as possible. I'm not going to be having this much longer. I don't know. I might go... I just want to collect an army of Neferata in so badly, and I want to do it as a proper legion, and I could do it as a host of Nagash, but I just don't see it working. I'll go through in detail, though, before I make my final decision. But the reason why I'm so adamant on getting rid of this, along with my undead models, putting them on eBay, is that the Daughters of Khaine are coming very, very soon. There's been a video for them, and the models are awesome. I can't resist them. I've got to make some money to go buy them, and the only way to do that is eBay, right? Right, I'll see you again later, guys. Bye bye.